If you're planning to get a refurbished or used iPhone in 2024, well, two of the options that might be in your radar is the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 13. Well, these phones were launched a few years back, in which the iPhone 13 is still being officially sold by Apple, and even though the upgrades we got with the iPhone 13 from the 12 were just some enhancements in few areas, and back at that time, well, those upgrades were not things to be hyped about, and that's logical because brick phones have reached a point where every year you won't see a lot of changes. But that said, the iterative updates that we get every year with phones, well, they do get reflected after a few years of launch. And that's the reason why I'm going to do a comparison between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 12 in 2024. Because if you're planning to buy any one of these phones, you need to figure out what are the advantages that the iPhone 13 have over the iPhone 12, and it's like tallying these advantages to figure out which one suits you better. And to do that, we're going to categorize this video into 5 core factors, and these are the factors, and in each of these factors I'm going to let you guys know how much advantage the iPhone 13 have over the iPhone 12, and from that your buying decision should be simplified. But before going deep into these factors, one obvious thing to consider is the pricing. And right now, for the same storage in Amazon US, there is a $100 difference for the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 12 for the refurbished units. So keep that as a reference, and let's move to our first factor, which is the design and build quality. Now, this is a factor where the iPhone 13 doesn't have any upper hand over the iPhone 12 because both these phones are built almost exactly same. They both have aluminum frame with glass at the front and back, and even after a few years, the build quality does hold well for both these phones. Now, the in-hand feel is again same for both these phones, but one thing I preferred in the iPhone 13 is that it's slightly more heavier, which gives it a bit more dense feel. Now, the notch in the iPhone 13 is smaller, but then it's a bit deeper, and both these phones house the same Face ID sensor, which again works similarly, so there is no advantage for the 13 with the smaller and deeper notch. So in this factor, the iPhone 12 and the 13 are staying neck on neck, and even with the water resistance rating, well, the IP rating for both these phones are the exact same. And here, I would say that the iPhone 12 should be given an advantage because again, for a lesser pricing, you're getting almost the same design and the same build quality as the iPhone 13. So now let's move to the second factor, which is the display and audio. Well, this is also another factor where the iPhone 13 doesn't have any strong advantage over the 12 because both these phones use almost the exact same display. They both are 6.1-inch OLED panels with the same resolution and pixel density, and even the viewing angles are identical. Both these displays are excellent for viewing contents, but sadly, both the panels just have 60Hz refresh rate. Now, if you're not used to 120Hz iPhones, you're gonna be totally fine. And here the peak brightness that the iPhone 13 can reach is 800 nits compared to 625 nits while watching typical content. And that's the advantage, and you will notice it especially while using outdoors. But again, the iPhone 12's display is bright enough that you won't have any issues even under direct sunlight usage. And yes, the speakers in the iPhone 13 are slightly more rich, but overall in this factor, the iPhone 12 doesn't fall short, and in 2024, I would rate this factor as a tie. So from the first two factors, well, the iPhone 12 is not giving up at all, and it's almost like it is holding with the iPhone 13, and hence for the price, I would say the iPhone 12 has the advantage, but the remaining three factors are going to change things. Because in the remaining three factors, the iPhone 12 shows its age and the iPhone 13 is going to show its advantage. So let's not waste any time and move to a third factor, which is the internals and user experience. And in this factor, the iPhone 13 does show its newer processor advantage. Now for the internals, the iPhone 13 has a A15 Bionic chip and the iPhone 12 has a A14 Bionic chip, and both these phones have 4GB RAM. And for the storage, well, the starting base storage for iPhone 13 is 128GB, while the base storage of iPhone 12 is 64GB. So that's something you have to be careful about, because in 2024, unless you are a very light user, obviously go for the 128GB variant. And from a moderate user's usage perspective, the iPhone 13's processor advantage can be noticed because it has slightly better performance and smoothness when you do a bit of intense task. Now, if it's a casual usage pattern like browsing Instagram or reading news or sending messages, well, while doing all those stuff, the iPhone 12 stays on par with the iPhone 13, But then when you do a bit of multitasking or photo editing or slightly more intense gaming, then you could see that the iPhone 13 is a bit more quicker in loading stuff, and also compared to the iPhone 12, the iPhone 13 didn't get that hot under the same load. And also for sure, the iPhone 13 should be supported for at least one more year in terms of software updates, and even in the next year, this performance advantage will be much more amplified, and hence in this factor, I would say that the iPhone 13 provides a 15 to 20% better user experience, especially if you're a moderate to heavy user. So that's all for the third factor, and now let's move to the fourth factor, which is a very important one, and it's the cameras. And in this factor also, the iPhone 13 has a slight upper hand. And it's not because of the fact that the iPhone 13 has cinematic video and photographic styles, but instead, it's because of the main 12 megapixel wide angle camera. To put it simple, the primary camera in the iPhone 13 is a much better sensor than the primary camera in the iPhone 12. Even though both the phones have 12 megapixel main sensors, the sensor in the iPhone 13 is a bigger one with sensor shift optical image stabilization. And while clicking photos, well, in proper lighting situations, you won't notice much differences, but as the light drops, the photos from the main camera in the iPhone 13 looks cleaner, and they're also quickly captured. And if you love clicking a lot of photos, you'll surely appreciate the main camera advantage the iPhone 13 have over the iPhone 12. Now the ultra-wide camera in both these phones are just fine, and I would only use it if there is good amount of light. And with the selfie camera too, the 13 doesn't have much advantage other than with slightly improved processing because they are the exact same sensors. And about video recording, well, if you're recording a 4K 60fps video with the main camera and the lighting environment is perfect, the output from both will stay neck on neck, but under slightly difficult situations, the iPhone 13's video output are less grainy and it keeps better focus. And also if you want to record HDR video, the 13 can record 4K 60fps HDR videos, while the 12 can do only up to 30fps in 4K setting. And overall in the camera department, I would say that the iPhone 13 has a solid 20 to 25% advantage over the iPhone 12, and if you're a person who clicks a lot of photos, you'll surely love the upper hand that the iPhone 13 offers in the camera side. So now that the camera side is done, let's move to the next factor, which is the battery. And here the 13 surely outshines the 12, especially in 2024. And this is because of three reasons. Firstly, the battery capacity in the iPhone 13 is more than the capacity in 12. Secondly, the iPhone 13 was launched 1 year after the iPhone 12, and hence most of the refurbished iPhone 13 units should have better battery health than the iPhone 12. And thirdly, the iPhone 13 is much more efficient than the iPhone 12, and hence even right now, if you compare an iPhone 12 and iPhone 13 with similar battery health and you are a moderate user, you'll surely get an hour and 20 to 30 minutes of extra battery backup in the 13 compared to the 12. Now that's if the battery health is the same in both these units, but if you're going to go and get a refurbished unit right now, the chances are that the iPhone 12's battery health will be much worse than the iPhone 13's because as I said earlier, the iPhone 12 was launched earlier and discontinued earlier than the iPhone 13. And about charging, well, both these phones use Lightning port and they have the same MagSafe charging speed. But then in this factor, since the iPhone 13 has better battery backup, I would say that the iPhone 13 has almost like 30% advantage over the iPhone 12. And that's something to consider because this is a very important factor. And here after checking all these factors, one thing that should be clear to you is that if the price gap is just 100 US dollars, or if you're in India and if the price gap is like 5,000 Indian rupees, then I would surely prefer to get the iPhone 13 over the iPhone 12. Because the upper hand that the iPhone 13 have over the iPhone 12 in these core factors does all add up to give a better user experience from the iPhone 13. And actually in the years to come, this advantage gap will surely widen. Now for the 5G range, call quality, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, well in all these things, both these phones performed almost the same. Now the only time I'm going to lean towards the iPhone 12 over the iPhone 13 is if I'm a very light user, then I'm going to go for the 64GB variant of the iPhone 12. And by doing that, I'll be making more savings. And if I'm a very light user, the difference that the iPhone 13 offers or the better things that the iPhone 13 offers won't be of much use, and hence making that savings makes sense. But other than that, I'll be surely preferring the iPhone 13 over the iPhone 12 in 2024. Well, that's all for this video, guys. Now, before you leave, if you're an iPhone 13 user or an iPhone 12 user, how's your user experience in 2024? Please leave all those thoughts in the comment section below, and if you like this video, a like is much appreciated and a sub to the channel would be nice too. See you again in the next one. Till then, bye.